So other than Xenoblade 3, most Xenoblade fans are interested in another game as well, Xenoblade Chronicles X, and if it will come to the Switch. In this video, I'm going to go through some of the changes that would have to be made for Xenoblade X to actually be viable on the Nintendo Switch, as well as at the end, give you my thoughts on the likeliness of Xenoblade Chronicles X actually coming to the Nintendo Switch. Please do keep in mind, however, throughout this video that I am not a games designer, and therefore some of the solutions to the problems I'm about to bring up may not be viable or possible, and therefore some of the information in this video may be slightly incorrect. But with all of that out of the way, let's jump right into the video. And so let's start off with the biggest major difference, the fact that Xenoblade Chronicles X on the Wii U was initially planned and made to be used constantly with the gamepad. The main screen/TV screen, or wherever you connected it up to, would be where you would see all of the gameplay happening, and the gamepad was primarily used as the map for Xenoblade Chronicles, allowing you to instantly look down, fast travel, and switch and change out probes. Now, of course, it isn't viable for this to happen on the Switch, as you can only have it docked for TV mode or handheld mode at once, and obviously can't do both at the same time, which some of you out there on the internet might think, oh well, it's not going to happen then, it's unconfirmed, it's impossible. But there are actually some very simple and easy solutions, such as option number 1. The developers simply map a button that previously wasn't used for very much to be the map button, which will allow you to instantly change the screen to the map, and therefore allow you to do everything that you would ordinarily do on the gamepad with your controller on the big screen. Or option 2, where they possibly recreate and remake the UI, and therefore make a menu that's more traditional to the standard Xenoblade games, where you'll choose the area you want to fast travel to, and then choose fast travel locations. Or finally, option 3, the devs just make you go and pick up your Switch and then fast travel and then dock your Switch back and then continue playing the game, which it's unlikely and be very annoying, but it is still a possibility. And any of these 3 solutions would solve the problem if you class option 3 as a solution at all. And this really wouldn't affect the gameplay much compared to what it was like on the Wii U. The thing is, you could technically move around whilst trying to fast travel, but of course you'd have been looking at the Wii U pad screen and not looking at the TV, which meant you didn't know where you were going anyway. So opening up the menu and therefore not being able to see where you go isn't that much of a change, and would arguably be better, because enemies can still just engage combat onto you and then no more fast travelling for you, where this can be a standard pause menu and freeze time, and you're safe to fast travel to your heart's content. And honestly, there's not that much more to talk about in terms of the gamepad screen. The probe menu can easily be updated to allow for buttons of quickly selecting your probe, selecting the location, and then planting them all in one go in the menu. And the only other thing the gamepad screen could do was play the game on the actual gamepad screen, which you can still do on a Nintendo Switch simply by undocking it. So for the most part, they're fairly easy solutions. A completely different issue, however, would come with the online features that came with Xenoblade X. Of course, now the Xenoblade Chronicles X servers are completely down. You cannot use the squad system or any of the online features like you once used to. And of course, if the game was to be re-released on Switch, then some of those servers would need to be reopened. And again, there's a couple of ways that they could take the online services for this game. There is the possibility that Monolith Soft, to save time and effort, would simply rerun everything that occurred through the lifespan of Xenoblade Chronicles X. So fighting and battling the same world bosses and having the same challenges constantly. Or if they wanted to invest more time into it, which I hope they would, they'd be able to create new bosses and new challenges and be able to improve the online services a bit compared to how they were in Xenoblade Chronicles X. An improvement to the squad system would be very nice indeed. A change that I'd like to see, which I've mentioned in a couple of my 8 things I'd like to see in Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition videos, is the ability to interact with other players in the overworld. Specifically only the ones that are in your squad, but it'd be very nice to just see other players interacting around the world and doing bits and pieces there, which would also be quite a nice quality of life change to the squad systems as well. well. If they really wanted to go all in with it, then they could also add even more game modes and come up with a lot of different things. And I think now that Xenoblade Chronicles 2 has been released and Xenoblade X Definitive Edition, for the lack of a better name, would have such a large following now, I think the online services would do a hell of a lot better than they did on the Wii U. And the last problem that I can think of things that will be preventing Xenoblade X from coming onto the Switch is how the game would handle in handheld mode. Now, this is a fundamental thing with Nintendo and the Nintendo Switch, that they want games to be both accessible in handheld mode and docked mode, even if docked mode is the preferred way to play. The issue with Xenoblade Chronicles X is it is a absolutely huge game. One of the tidbits that I can remember from when the game was releasing is Monolith Soft very nearly had to put the game on 2 discs, because at the time, with the technology that we had in 2015, there nearly wasn't enough space on a standard disc to contain all of the data. Now, the game would run fine on a Nintendo Switch docked, as hardware wise isn't much different from the Wii U, but it is a slight upgrade. The issue will come when playing in handheld mode. Most games degrade in quality, with the fact that the Switch can output 1080p onto a TV but only 720p onto its own screen, and that's partially due to all of the extra things that the Nintendo Switch has got to focus on when trying to play the game. And the issue you could run into is the hardware that is in the Nintendo Switch not being able to run Xenoblade X in handheld mode. Now, I believe that a software update optimizing the game and optimizing the Nintendo Switch could allow us to run Xenoblade X at 720p as it runs on the TV at 1080p. However, I don't know enough of the small details about how the Switch actually works to confirm or deny that. Of course, we were all hoping for a Switch Pro, which would have been a powerful Switch, but got the Switch OLED, and due to how the OLED technology works, it will help with the running of a game in handheld mode, but it is doubtful that it would make enough of a difference to allow a game as massive as Xenoblade X to run. The easiest way around would be to upgrade the software in the Nintendo Switch to allow it to be more optimized for most games, not just Xenoblade Chronicles X, and possibly limit some of the functions of Xenoblade X, such as lowering the render and draw distance and other game factors like that to optimize the game further to be in handheld mode, which wouldn't be the best thing, but it could be the only option. And finally, the section that I'm sure a lot of you have been waiting for. What are the chances of it actually happening? Well, allow me to start in terms of an interview in 2018 with Tetsuya Takahashi, which is the head developer for Xenoblade at Monolith Soft. In said interview, he was asked about Xenoblade X coming to the Switch, and his reaction apparently was allowing him to laugh, and said that the major issue of why it wouldn't happen is, as bluntly as possible, money, which is a factor with just life. And the money side of it will of course be a massive thing with any game development cycle. More importantly, however, they will need the support of Nintendo. And we then come to the issue of the initial sales of Xenoblade Chronicles X, which didn't do particularly well on the Wii U. Now, the same happened for Xenoblade Chronicles 1, as that game at launch didn't sell amazingly either. However, thanks to a certain somebody, Conroy, the game became a lot more popular, and therefore there was a lot more interest for it, allowing the 3DS version to sell a lot better, as well as Definitive Edition after the success of Xenoblade Chronicles 2. However, Xenoblade Chronicles X still isn't selling particularly well, and doesn't have that much of a demand of people looking for the Wii U version, even though there's a big community of people wanting it on the Switch. Nintendo have got to be skeptical about its success. The positive news, however, is in that interview, his exact words were recreating, which is what they did of course with Xenoblade Chronicles DE. They completely remade the game from the ground up. Now, to save money and time, it should be possible to port the game over to the Nintendo Switch, which would basically bring the game over in its current state, and all that would actually be required is them assessing some of the issues which I've brought up previously in this video. This would save time and money. However, I don't really think it's Monolith Soft's own approach to making video games, as I'm sure that they would prefer the game to be as polished and updated as possible. And so if I have to give you my honest opinion opinion on if I think it's actually going to happen, my response will be, don't hold your breath. At the moment, it's probably unlikely for Xenoblade X to come onto the Switch. There is of course the issue of money, but I think the more important and pressing issue is the software that it'd be installed onto, as the Nintendo Switch probably wouldn't be up to the capabilities of running Xenoblade X at all times like they can do with its other games. But I don't think the possibility is entirely ruled out. If of course we keep screaming Xenoblade X Switch version more and more, the chances of it will rise, and eventually Nintendo and Monolith Soft will start to hear us and something could be put into the works. What I do think is more likely, however, is a sequel before a remaster, as if Xenoblade Chronicles X2 does very well, then I feel it'd be very likely for at some point them to bring Xenoblade X to another console. But anyways, those are my thoughts on the chances of Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition. If you've enjoyed this video and want to stay up with all of the latest Xenoblade news, whether it's Xenoblade 3 or Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition /2, then hit that big fat red subscription button right below so you don't miss out on any of my future content. Also, just want to give you all one more big thank you for the support of the channel over the last couple of recent months. You're all amazing. Until next time, guys, peace.